discussion on 9/11 and where we stand today in the fight or the war on terror. But before we get into this evening, I just want to give you a couple of notices of what's coming up for the Free Thinking Film Society. On October 20th, here at the Waterbury Archives, we'll be doing an event on organ harvesting in China. So you may know the Chinese have an active organ harvesting program. We'll have a speaker and a film or some film about it on October 20th. November 2nd, we're going to have the Canadian premiere of Gloria Greenfield's film Body and Soul, The State of the Jewish Nation. Really excited. We've shown Gloria's past films, The Case for Israel and Judeophobia before. This is her third film. She'll be here for that event. It's a Canadian premiere. Erwin Cochran will be there. He'll be here as well. And it's going to be a terrific evening. And our guest tonight, Brett Stevens, is also in that film. So yeah, how important that is. Now, before I get to tonight, I guess I have to add a bit of comedy. I don't know how many people here know, but in August, Ottawa was the host to the People's Social Forum. Right? And so this is the program. This is a left-wing event that was put on it was sponsored by all of the unions in Canada, as well as Rabble. I don't know if you know Rabble. Rabble is that horrible website that Judy Rebick runs here in Canada. And so they put on, this is a 100-page booklet. This is the program, half in French, half in English. And they had almost 500 workshops over 5 days in Ottawa. They had a film festival, rock concerts, you name it. And so I decided, how could I pass up this opportunity and attend the People's Social Forum? And so I thought I should tell you about some of the great seminars they had here. Now, one of them, I didn't make this one, but it's using hip-hop to deconstruct social justice issues. This workshop uses progressive and revolutionary examples of hip-hop music as points of departure to deconstruct critical social justice issues like imperialism, prison industry complex, white supremacy, institutional racism, capitalism, corporate media, and sexism. This workshop is interactive, contextual, and comprehensive, and will be accompanied by an engaging PowerPoint presentation. I'm not making this up. One I did attend is called Veganism in the Occupied Territories, Anti-Colonialism and Animal Liberation. Now, I didn't know what this was going to be about. So I had to attend because I thought, is this going to be about veganism in the West Bank? But the occupied territories to this person was Canada. Canada is occupied by white settlers who came over with pigs, chickens, and cows. And he calls them captive animals. And because land use for these animals is so extensive, it's ruined the Aboriginal diet of squash, beans, and corn. And so only by getting to a vegan diet can we combat climate change and bring peace and tranquility to the world. There was a forum, I went to one, how to get rid of capitalism. That was a fun one because in that one they talked about how the Soviet Union was heaven until Stalin ruined it. But under Lenin it was absolutely amazing. Here's one. What is Canada doing in the Ukraine and what should the peace movement do about it? And it's all about our aggressive posture towards Russia. Right? They're all upset because we're being mean and nasty to Putin. I'm not making this up. There's one here on was Marx right? There's a seminar here on 5 decades of the Cuban Revolution. I didn't go to that one. One I did go to was on ecofeminism. I couldn't pass that one up, and I went, and it was run by this professor from Guelph University. And the whole seminar, I'm glad I have it on tape, but the whole seminar was about how we have to get rid of oil, and women know how to do this. And in fact, it was done she claimed in Nigeria, when the women of Nigeria had a show your vagina demonstration. And that demonstration chased out Chevron from Nigeria. And I asked her, should this tactic be used to fight Boko Haram? And she said, well, this is a little more complicated because in Nigeria, the Muslims have been pushed into a small area and they don't have schools, they can't access their holy books, and so they have no choice but to join organizations like Boko Haram, which, by the way, she said is financed by the CIA. And at which point I had to ask her, was the Taliban financed by the CIA? And she said, yes, of course. This led to an overall strategy on how to get rid of oil because she hopes that we'll reach the day when we can go back to animal-drawn carts for our transportation. And why do we need all these huge ships using diesel fuel running around the world with containers when we could use sailboats? Sail is so much faster. This, I swear to God, she probably makes $120,000 at the University of Guelph. And then I went on, after all the seminars, they had a day of assemblies. So they got everybody together to come up with declarations, on indigenous solidarity, on education, mining, justice. I had to go to the one on Palestine. And I sat there for 2 hours, 140 people in this assembly to discuss a declaration on how to deal with Palestine. And it was 2 hours of how to take a declaration and make it harsher and harsher and harsher. I mean, it got to the point where we have to hunt. We have to hunt down Canadians who volunteer for the IDF, send them to prison. The Palestinians can use any method to oppose the occupation. There was not one mention of the Hamas charter, not one mention of rockets. It was basically a declaration on the destruction of Israel. And the funniest part was, I don't know how I sat there, but somebody got up and there were a few good questions, but somebody got up and said, well, how come we talk about the Palestinians, we don't talk about some of the other peoples in the world, Tibets, and we don't talk about some of the other people. And this woman got up from Independent Jewish Voices, and she said, well, the answer to that is simple. She said, for 10 years now, I've been demonstrating outside the Israeli consulate in Toronto, and the Zionists ask me that all the time. And I say to them, well, the reason we focus on Israel is that it's the only country where you can give money and get a tax receipt. You can't give money to other countries to get a tax receipt, and so that's the answer. And I said, well, okay. And so this is, if you work in the public service in Canada, your union is sponsoring this. The PSAC, PIPS, all the public service unions are on the sponsorship. So a lot of money, and I counted there were 7 anti-Israel seminars, including one by this horrible author, Shlomo Sand, who disputes the notion of even a Jewish people existing. So this is what union money goes to. And I just think it's scandalous, and nobody writes about this. And I'm currently in the middle of writing a book, so this will be a nice, fun chapter for my book. But it's actually quite sad. This is what the left is these days. Okay, so that's my fun part of the evening. I'm sorry, what? Well, the seminars that I went to had around 25 to 30 people, but they had 500 seminars. The assembly on Palestine had around 140 people, and they had around 15 of these assemblies. So I don't know, they claim there were 5,000 people who came from across the country, but I don't know what the real attendance was. And if you at the time, if you were walking in the market, you could see some of these people downtown, and you could recognize them. They're like aging hippies who are wearing buttons, and you could tell you're one of that People's Social Forum. I know where you're going, and because they're wearing a button and stuff, and they look like it, but it's actually quite frightening. We do need a debate in this country, whether it's right or left, but this really does more than cheapen the debate. It really is quite sad. Okay, so for tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce our panel, and then each of them will come up and talk for around 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion, and then you can have your chance to have a Q&A, and then we'll have a reception. So first off, I'll start with our guest from New York City, Mr. Bret Stephens, who is the Deputy Editorial Page Editor of the Wall Street Journal. He's responsible for the international opinion pages, and he also writes Global Views, the paper's weekly foreign affairs column. He's a member of the Journal's editorial board. He's a winner of the Pulitzer Prize. He's got a book coming out this fall, which you can now order on Amazon. And so I strongly suggest you order Bret's book. He's a regular panelist on the Journal Editorial Report, which is a weekly talk show broadcast on Fox. And he was also editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post from 2002 to 2004. Please welcome Bret Stephens.